Hey guys, this is going to be part 1 of restoring our gauge cluster. These are the colors I'm going to be using to paint the needles. It's Testor's Enamel Red Fluorescent and Flat White. These are going to be the supplies we'll be using. First, you're going to need a fork to remove the needles, an X-Acto blade, a cup of water, your gauge needles, I'll go over how to take them out in a minute, and various grits of sandpaper. Here you can already see I started with just the X-Acto blade. You want to be really careful doing this, as you can gouge the needle and you'll need to sand it out. Any scratches or marks will show with the paint, so prep is extremely important. I wanted this color red at first, but it was too dark at night, so I'm switching to the fluorescent red. This color is Testor's Gloss Dark Red. Links will be in the description. Firstly, before you start taking any needles out, you're going to want to warm up your car and get the needles to the position that they are in at a warm idle. This is so you know the exact position you'll be putting them back in and you get an accurate picture. Don't mind the missing speedometer needle, it's not really that important. You're going to want to get pictures from directly head on from the needle so you can get as accurate as possible. You definitely want these to go back as close as they were so nothing is reading incorrectly. So here we have my gauge cluster. It is from a 1999 Yukon Denali that I'll be swapping into my 1996 Tahoe. I've already swapped the needles for the original style. There you can see it has some fogging in it, but we'll polish that out. To take the cover off, there are 3 clips on the side. Here's the first one. Just push it in and it will pop out. And here are the other 2. And then this just comes right off. Here you can get a better look at the needles. They are the original late model GMT 400 style. I've painted the tachometer white already. The other needles I bought painted, but not really that happy with them as they have some chips and some scratches in them and they're just a little too lightly colored for what I'm going for. I think the white tack is a nice touch, but that's up to you. Now, to take the needles off, you're going to want to take a fork and gently place it under the needle and then pry up with just a little bit of force and it'll come right off. Just like that. Now getting onto the actual process. First, with an X-Acto blade, you want to take off just the top layer of paint and as much as you can. Again, you want to be super careful doing this as any scratches you make will have to be sanded out and it's just going to take longer to finish. Then you're going to want to start with an aggressive grit. I used 400 and wet sanded with each grit. You want to take all the paint off with the lowest grit you're using. I don't use it in this clip, but I do use some Testor's paint thinner to get a lot of the paint off, and it does work decently well. You definitely want to take your time with this grit to get all the deep scratches out, but you probably won't have any that are too deep. Next, I move on to 1000 grit. Again, take your time, and it will make the final product much nicer. I use my phone's flashlight to check for any paint specks I missed or any deeper scratches. After the 1000, I swapped to 2, and I use an air compressor to get any water out from under the needle, just to get a better look at the progress. And then I finish up the needles. I use 3000 and then finally 5. I also use some Meguiar's Plastex, which is a cleaner and polish. You don't have to use this. I ended up only using it on this one, but it's not really worth it in my opinion. It did take me a few days with about 32-hour sessions to finish up all the needles, just to give you an idea of how long it's going to take to get the results that I was happy with. That also included the painting. And here you can also see I had to go back as I missed a few scratches and had to redo a few grits. That's just what you're going to have to do if you miss any. And this is the final product after sanding. You can see it's pretty nice and clear, and now it's ready for some paint. Leaving it clear is also an option. I've seen some people do that before, and it does look pretty good if that's your kind of style. Now for the painting. Again, here's the color I'm using. What you're going to want to do is take your paintbrush, and you're going to want to dip it in and just drop the paint onto the needle. This paint is quite thin, so it should be pretty easy. You do not want any brush strokes showing on the needle, so dropping the paint onto it and letting it fill in will give it a better look. And there we go, paint is on. You can kind of see that it's bubbled up a bit from the surface tension, and this is what you want. You want to make sure that the paint ends right where I have it, a little past the reflective piece, because that's what lights the needle up. It's okay to have the paint run down the sides a bit, just as I have. You actually want that to happen, so you make sure you have full coverage to the edge. Just sand the paint back on the sides with 5000 grit, and it'll look perfect. And here's the final product. I suggest letting it sit out to dry for at least a full 24 hours, just so you make sure you don't leave any fingerprints on it. You can see it came out pretty nice and uniform. In the next episode, I'll go over reinstalling them back into the cluster, as well as putting a new overlay in there and polishing the plastic cover. See you guys then.